Well, thanks all of you. I always like to start at a women's club meeting that the heart and soul of the Republican Party are all the women's club meetings. And you really keep us in line, and we couldn't do it, what we do without you. Just like in a relationship, it takes two equal but different parts to make it go. We need the Republican Women Club and the Republicans worse than ever these days. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dan Griffey. I'm in the state legislature. I've served in the legislature for 8 years now. I'm going on my 5th re-election. Every 2 years means we were always run. So to ask the question, how are you doing this campaign cycle? Well, the campaign cycle never stops for a representative. So this campaign cycle we did really well. We achieved nearly 58%, very close, very stone's throw away from 58%. So we're not terribly worried about the campaign, but we don't take it for granted. We came here the hard way. I ran for 6 years straight to get this seat. I had to beat a 20-year, well-trenched, seated Democrat incumbent. But since then, some good news. I live in Mason County, but again, because you live in rural Mason County, we don't have a lot of things there. So my second home is Kitsap County because that's where my parents took me to go to dinner, to go to lunch, or to go shopping. So I always felt like Bremerton, Silverdale was my second home because we were always there. The 35th changed a lot. Before we started, before I won, we would go to the Mason County Fair and you would see the Democrat booth and there would be like 50 pictures on the wall, portraits, and they were all Democrats and they were all elected in Mason County. You go to the Mason County Fair, which doesn't exist any longer, but you go anywhere where they have an ability to show the store, display their pictures, and the wall is full of Republicans and there's only a couple Democrats on the wall. So that didn't happen without tremendous hard work. Just our campaign alone, it took 66,000 doors to get us over the top. First time out the gate, the then Republican leader of the House in the House of Representatives, Richard DeBolt, said, "Thank you, kid, for running in the 35th district." Mind you, he's only 5 years younger than me, or older than me. "Thank you, kid, for running in the 35th district. We really need candidates to play blocking maneuvers for our real candidates." That was the uphill battle that I felt, and it kind of made my wife mad, so we worked a lot harder, because if my wife wants me to work hard, then you know what, I'm going to work very hard. You don't have any choice. But I don't say this for, I say this to kind of preface something. It really feels hard, doesn't it? I mean, the primary numbers didn't look very good, did they? We would have loved to see better primary numbers. But a true and accurate understanding of why voters voted that way is what the House Republican Organizational Committee is trying to do, and that's what I'm a member of. I serve as the House Republican Whip, and I have served in that position for 4 years now. Maybe if I'm elected again, I'll serve again. But being in the whip position, at least for the House Republicans, we serve as senior members of leadership. So the team that makes all the decisions, the hard decisions, the easier decisions, the whip is an automatic member of that team. We also, about 25 or 30 years ago, we were tired of losing soundly in every legislative seat, so we set up the House Organizational Committee. And its only job is to elect House Republicans to the House, so we can bolster our numbers and hopefully someday get the majority. So back to the depressing news. The primary didn't look as good as we thought it would look. We wanted it to look a lot better, but we spent a considerable amount of time, money, and effort to decipher the numbers and understand what they mean. 70% of the unidentified swing voters, or identified swing voters, or voters that we've identified on the issues that we have right now, 70% of them didn't show. Of the Republicans that didn't show, most of them didn't show because of concerns of election integrity, so we got to work on our messaging. And I'm telling each and every one of you, if you're very concerned about election integrity, not voting, it just is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So quit that thinking. It is not helping. We can do something about our elections when we get the majority. We can't do anything, literally, significant to change the numbers and the direction if we don't get the majority. So we have a lot of good things to think about, or data that we took out of that primary election. We know that 70% didn't turn out, and we know what motivates them. The number one thing that motivates them is public safety. And what did the majority party do to public safety in Washington State? Well, we all know that the majority party absolutely dismantled proactive policing. They absolutely blamed law enforcement for a manufactured societal problem. They blamed law enforcement, and law enforcement was the one that was sacrificed at the altar. And we all should be ashamed of ourselves for allowing it to happen. Right now in Washington State, it is so bad that if two people, credible people in this room, actually witness a rape and a murder, and they call 911 and they give an accurate description with the plate number of the car that did it and the person driving it, it is questionable whether law enforcement has the right or authority to pull them over. I ask each and every one of you kind of, this is a rhetorical question, but who are they protecting? They are certainly not protecting the single mother that is struggling to get by. They're not protecting the children from serial predators. I mean, I bring it out this way or talk about it this way. Most of you know that I have made it my mission to end sexual assault in Washington State. I know it's an impossible goal, but I want to end it. And if sexual assault actually happens, I want them to be able to, law enforcement to be able to track them down forever after commission of the crime and hold them accountable. During COVID, there was excuses made again, and all of the hard work that I know the Republican women in Washington State helped me to end the statute of limitations on felony sex crimes. We've done nearly no rape kit testing. Sexual assault was through, the backlog is done, right? So everyone's heard of the backlog of rape kits. We did the whole backlog. But during COVID, we didn't do any testing and we didn't do any prosecuting because of excuse of COVID. They also hurt the single mother by mandating by 2030 that Washington State, or at least establishing a goal, that by 2030 Washington is going to go away from the internal combustion engine and go to all electric vehicles. Now, it is crazy, and this is the craziest part. They don't understand technology, and I made my speech on the floor about that was, you do not have to burn gasoline in an internal combustion engine. You can actually burn hydrogen in an internal combustion engine. You can actually burn propane in an internal combustion engine. And if carbon is your concern, nearly no carbon comes out of a hydrogen-powered vehicle, and 90% less carbon, or 80% less carbon, comes out of a propane-powered vehicle. They didn't like it, so they gabbled me 4 times. They didn't like what I had to say, and then they just shut the mic off because, I was telling the truth. So the serious position that we're in right now in Washington State is a bad direction, right? So at K-12 education right now, but you know that way. English language skills in Washington State competency rate is about 50%, and it's only going down. Our mathematics competency rate or our understanding is in the low 20s and dropping like a rock. We got some real problems. Freedom of speech, at least for a candidate anymore, is almost gone. It is so bad that yesterday, I made my career as a professional firefighter. I did a heartfelt post about 9/11 because I will never forget. And I was still dogged. They can't even leave us alone on 9/11, still dogged on Facebook by, yeah, but what are you going to do about this? And, yeah, what are you going to do about that? 343 of my brothers and sisters perished in those buildings. They went running into a situation that most people were running out of. And I think this draws something, we should all think about it. We are not treating our public servants very well. I will tell you, I just retired June 1 because of a back injury after 35 years as a professional firefighter. And in the end, people that dial 911 all too often were slapping firefighters, spitting in the face of firefighters. It's just not law enforcement any longer that's suffering this. And I like to talk about the fact that there's only, it seems anymore, there's only two ways that we deal with things in this society, and it's never civil. I don't want to hear what you have to say, or I don't like what you have to say, so I'm going to turn off my hearing and I'm going to yell at you. Our founders set this great nation up on the idea that we were going to constantly attempt to perfect it, that we were going to work together. We were going to talk out our problems, and maybe if you give me the honor of tell me what you think, and then reciprocate the honor, and I can tell you what I think, that maybe you change your mind 20%, and maybe I change mine 20%. That is almost completely gone. So for all these new candidates that are coming up, that are really putting themselves on the line, my heart goes out to them. And we all need to surround them with all the love and support that we possibly can. Because it is tougher, way tougher. I mean, in 2014 when I first got in, it was tough, and we had doors slammed in our face at times. But nowadays, it's visceral, it's physical, it's violent. I reject that. I think love can conquer all, can support all. I can forgive. Republicans have an ability to forgive, but the thing that Republicans are asking is, especially on these police reform issues, we're asking that people actually prove that they've reformed so they won't injure society any longer. That's all we're asking. We're in a tough place with workforce participation. Right now, the most important trades in our society are almost impossible to fill right now. Nursing, firefighting, never thought that would happen. When I first graduated to the Washington State Fire Academy in 1989, and in 1990 I tested for the Kemp Fire Department. We tested in 3 testing groups of 3,000 people for 5 positions. I almost gave up and said, I'll never be a firefighter. My goodness, it's such a hard profession to get. It's such an elite profession. Not anymore. Nursing. Our nurses are working more overtime than they can possibly handle. Now, hospital policies aren't making any of their working conditions much better because they forced them to do a mask for so long and then forced them to get vaccinations. Our professional firefighters, a lot of them left, hundreds of years of experience, just walked off the job because they would not submit to the mandatory vaccines. The crazy thing about mandatory vaccines in the beginning, they were touting that the vaccine would prevent you from acquiring or transmitting the disease, right? Well, what happened? I was fully vaccinated because I wanted to keep my job, and that was the only reason. And I got COVID. I was on my back for a month, and I gave it to my whole family. I posted on Facebook, too, talking about the terrible way that people talk. I posted on Facebook the actual factual truth, that I was fully vaccinated, I got COVID, and I spread it to my family. And here's how terrible it is. Republicans bashed me because I was a sellout. And Democrats bashed me and said I was lying because it was impossible to get the disease if you were vaccinated. And now we know that both things can be true, and two different things can be true. So I think the thing that I want to impart on all of you good ladies in this wonderful club, Republicans have to treat Republicans better. We have to support other Republicans. We can't have purity standards any longer. We must reinvigorate the Reagan rule. And I'll tell you what, at this time, because we're not making hardcore Republicans any longer, it can't be the 80-20 rule anymore. It might have to be the 70-30 rule. We have got to do everything we possibly can because our children's futures depend on it. Our society depends on it as a whole. And I'll tell you what, if we don't, we will suffer from another 20, 25 years in purgatory. You know, the Israelites spent 40 years in punishment because of their transgressions, and they were pretty grumpy in those 40 years. They didn't treat each other very well, and well, probably righteously so when you're around a bunch of people for a long period of time. It's really tough to work out your differences civilly. House Republicans in Washington State have not had the say for 40 years. We have a tendency to be grumpy because of it. We have a tendency to forget who we should blame for the problems that we're having. Bullet to fire to make all of this stuff go away for you, I would have fired the bullet 10 years ago. There is no magic bullet. We have a representative form of government that has 3 branches. Unfortunately, we've had one branch be in a dictatorship for a long time. Shouldn't have happened. That doesn't work well in a representative government. It is just so terribly important for us to really listen to that now. If one of your House Republicans voted one time a way that you didn't necessarily agree with, you might not understand that, well, at one point in time, one of our members that represented the 26th, they come to leadership and say, hey, if all of the Republican leadership doesn't vote for this bill, if they don't vote for this bill, then that member isn't getting their bill. And I just want you to know that. And so then we vote for it because we, and to be honest with you, it was a benign thought. And then we get just absolutely torn apart. How could you possibly be such a rhino? And I don't understand how we could possibly talk to each other that way. I wish Republicans would throw that word out. If we want to turn this place around, if we really, really, truly, and I know you all do because you show up regularly, we have to be better to each other, because if we are going to expect other people to be better to each other, we have to start with a known commodity, a known group, a known amount of friends. We have to support one another better than we ever have. I believe that a love solution or a love-based solution can solve our drug abuse problem. I think our housing and homelessness issue can be handled from a love direction. Right now, the majority party says they have the right to sleep in a ditch surrounded by rats and have bugs crawling on them. Sorry, I forgot this was a lunch thing. Anyway, the nastiness the foulness that we allow our fellow human beings to live in under the guise of it's their rights. I think the loving direction would be, if they can't drive the ship any longer, that we're going to take the steering wheel for a minute and we're going to drive it for them. Right now, people absolutely languish and want for services. Washington State spends billions of dollars on services, and I'll tell you what, they help nearly zero people. With Republicans in charge, billions of dollars would lovingly save people, and would lovingly rebuild lives. With Republicans in charge, you will have to ask for permissionless, and your private property rights will be respected. The founders of this great nation thought that that property ownership was going to be the end-all, be-all attainment of people, and that property owners are sovereigns of nations unto their own, a confederation of sovereign nations. And at this point in time, do you feel like you're sovereign in your property at all? No. With Republicans in charge, a lot of things will get better. Your taxes will be lower. Less abortions will be performed. You will be respected in your private property. You'll be safer and secure in your everyday being. Yeah. I see that Michelle's walked in, so I'll quit talking so much. But is there a time for question and answer, or would you like? Yeah. So if there's a couple questions about what I had to say, I know I rambled on, but she said I had to do 20 minutes, and I wasn't totally prepared for 20-minute speech. So I hope it was somewhat informational. And
I have a question.
Go ahead.
As I look at the kind of expenditure coming out of the Republican Party in Washington State for TV advertising, if they were to consolidate with one or two messages, such as public safety, such as education, they would rise all boats. Every damn one of you. That's your number one, number two, number three. I don't see the Republican Party giving you what you need to be able to get the message across ubiquitously across this state. And if they did, you'd have a much easier job.
Amen, sister. When we did the polling, and I do it when I start every one of my campaigns, the top three issues in Washington State was public safety, taxes, and education. I mean, that's all. So, folks, there are so many things that are really near and dear to us, and we can fix all those things. But there are three things that will change that 70% of voters that I talked about that didn't show up, that will absolutely change their mind, and that is exactly what she said. And I want us all to coalesce behind that. Some of it is the Republican Party. Some of it is different campaigns that honestly believe we can win on other issues. And I believe in voter science. I believe in the science of understanding what the voters care about. And I understand about that we need to put candidates in positions that actually understand and will vote and will champion those positions. You're absolutely right. And if you can find a way to make it all happen, I would be open.
I'll speak with you after.
Thank you so much. But we... Go ahead.
You mentioned people are concerned about voter fraud. Is that a concern from where you're at, what you see, and what do you suggest telling people that are concerned about voter fraud?
So the manufacturing of ballots I haven't found in my county, at my three counties, right? I haven't seen manufacture ballots. Now there is some evidence that ballots are manufactured and that happens. I haven't seen it, but what does happen is those who are constitutionally or legally prohibited from voting vote all the time. They do. So felons vote because we haven't unified our court system. So when somebody has had their voting rights removed because they violated the trust of society, it doesn't get reported to the elections division. So they can vote. Dead people vote all the time because for a similar reason. We did not unify our court system. So we have a hodgepodge of software and reportings that don't regularly report. And for those people that want gun control, we regularly don't report those who have had their gun rights taken away. So it actually elevates our cry from the Republican side. Enforce the laws that are already on the books. Don't try to take guns away from people that are legally possessing them. So in many ways, and the illegals vote in Washington State. So we can talk about top 3 things, and we don't have to talk about the last thing that turns them off so much and won't vote for us, right? And they are all election integrity issues, right? So if we unified our court system and we had a better software, right? We had a better reporting and a mandate that all of that happen, then those that had their voting rights and their gun ownership rights removed would be prohibited from doing that. And all too often, when you have your gun ownership rights removed because of you being a felon, that sort of thing, they can just go buy a gun anyway because they never report it to Nixus. So we can talk in a way that doesn't turn them off, because we ask the questions in our polling. We need to know and get down to the actual nitty-gritty of what makes them, what motivates them to go. And we know what motivates them on election integrity, and we know what puts the blinders on and shuts their ears off, right? And so we can talk about those things, and it goes very well. And then you can also start talking about other things when you find that they might be open to it. But there are problems in our election system. It would be way better if we verified people were legally here, if they had their voting rights. And it would be way better if we opened our polling places, because to be honest with you, election day in my hometown of Allen was a party. And it was one more further death nail to community, ending that community engagement. So I think we can talk about those things, and we can talk about them very loudly and proudly. Let's just be careful about talking about manufacturer ballots. That's the only thing that turned them off in the focus groups.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.